with my rock cube created, and with a different rock on different sides, I'm ready to clone this and make my wall. What I'll do here is I'll pick this rock cube and press W for move, and I'm going to press V and D to move the pivot first down onto one of the corners. So when I clone, I can have these all go together nicely. And then I'll move this over, zoom in by pressing F, and I'm going to snap this onto my decking, or close to, or maybe onto the wall here. So there it is on the building, and line it up. And I think what we'll do is have these kind of lap over the decking in places. And then to clone this, I've got some options, having put the pivot there. What I'd like to do is clone a bunch of these first, and then start to move them in and out a little bit, maybe in a more organic manner. And a couple of ways I can do this. If I press Control D for duplicate, I get rock wall 2, or rock cube 2, and then V for snap lets me pull it over and snap it. And then Shift D, or duplicate with transform, a number of times will clone these along, and I get my duplicates here. However, I'd like to be able to rotate some of these, and I'm going to go in and do this somewhat randomly. Now that these are fairly together, and I'll just make a few more of them out here so I get a nice big wall of them. I'm going to take the row of rock wall pieces. Here I am in the top view, and I'll select all of them. And what I'll do is to recenter their pivots by choosing Modify, Center Pivot. And now, I'll press D as an example so you can see the pivots, they're all back in the centers. What this will let me do is pick these somewhat at random and rotate them 90 degrees on my relative transform on different axes. I'll pick some other ones here, and I'm going to rotate them 90 on the Z. And because I recentered the pivot, they all maintain their place relative to each other. There's 90 on the Y. But the textures are now moving around. Now I'll take this rock wall collection duplicate it, and move it up on the Y by 100. I'll do this one more time. So I get a nice tall 3-meter high wall of these rock cubes. And again, I'm going to go in and pick some random ones in here because they are all, they've all had their pivots centered. Pick a bunch of random ones, and I'm going to rotate them. Whoops. I'm going to press E for rotate. Occasionally I get ahead of myself there, it's okay. 90-degree rotation there. Pick some other seemingly random pieces in here and do 90 on the Z. And then I'll pick maybe even just a few more here. And I'm just really trying to go through and move around the texture a little bit. There's my 90. And now I'm ready to kind of push them in and out, so it's no longer a straight wall. And we can do this fairly easily by just selecting and pressing the Move tool. We could do multiple selections, really up to you kind of how you want to run it. What I'll do is I'll pick a whole bunch of them in a row here as an example, and I'm going to push them forward a little bit, and then holding Shift or Control actually to deselect the outer two, push a couple more forward, and take that last one and two and push it up and get an uneven shape. Maybe it's more of like a bench or something, and I'll do this all the way across. And so I'll start to just kind of grab these and move them around a little bit and make a fairly organic shape. We'll take some of the top ones and start to pull them back a bit. And I'm just making sure I'm moving on one axis at a time here. I think is the big deal, and maybe I'll take this end and just pull it back and flare it out and give this wall some visual texture by adjusting it so it's not just this straight big thick wall of cubes, but it actually has some play to it. And I can even start to take a couple of pieces, a couple of rows along here, and I'll push these forward a touch and then reduce down that selection even more and push some more forward and pull a few back. And just kind of looking at the overall waveforms when I'm doing this, that it's not just any random move. I want to have some curves, some carryover from rock to rock. We'll pull these back a little bit. So I start to get something to mimic some of the organic forms we see in other design elements. And I think that's the really key thing, especially when moving simple elements around like this, is that there is a loose feel to it in the careful placement of simple parts.